Do you think there's a risk that not just Joe Biden, but the Democratic Party in general just takes for granted that, well, the black people are with us, so we don't really have to give them anything else. They're going to vote for us regardless. Look, they voted for Joe Biden in overwhelming numbers, 6 in 10 black voters, particularly in southern states. They all voted for Joe Biden. We don't need to offer anything more.
It's like you got, whites telling us to stay in our place, and you got black people saying, oh, stop, now is not the time. You're going to get Trump reelected. It has to come to a point where we stop putting the burden on black voters to show up for Democrats and start putting the burden on Democrats to show up for black voters.
So what you just heard there was Charlemagne the God earlier today with Joy Reid on MSNBC. And he was discussing the Joe Biden "you ain't black" comments and some of the fallout since those comments. Specifically, he was noting how a lot of people of all backgrounds, black and white for instance, have been saying that we have to look past this moment because to do anything else would be helping Donald Trump. That we can't actually focus in on what Joe Biden's comments represent in terms of how problematic the mainstream corporate Democratic Party is with regard to minority and black voters. We can only bury this lest we help Donald Trump. And I think Charlemagne makes a fantastic point. And I think Joy Reid today made a fantastic point that is totally inappropriate. And this is the time more than ever to have a frank discussion about how the Democratic Party treats key elements of its base. And there is perhaps no more element keyer to their victories than African Americans, than black voters. Black women, black men, they play a crucial role in the success of that party. And Charlemagne notes that maybe now's the time to focus a little bit less on how black voters turn out for the Democratic Party and more how the Democratic Party needs to turn out for them, maybe unlike it ever has before, because those groups are facing systemic barriers, historical and contemporary. When you look at the populations that struggle, it's often poor people of all backgrounds, but specifically those who are poor and racialized, those who are poor and marginalized, suffer the absolute greatest. And I think that's what Charlemagne is talking about, and how the Democratic Party has not done enough. And I want to say that it's very troubling from my perspective that Joy Reid, simply having these discussions, she's getting absolutely blasted on social media today from a lot of her traditional viewers, from a lot of mainstream Democrats that want to silence this discussion. Look, I'm a Bernie Sanders guy. During the primaries, I made more than a few videos critical of Joy Reid. You guys remember the body language expert who basically she brought on to smear Bernie Sanders. I have lots to gripe about with Joy Reid, and I'm sure I will in the future. But her having Charlemagne on to have this frank discussion about how the Democratic Party maybe needs to do more for the core of its base is 100% appropriate. And the only thing inappropriate is the reaction to that. It goes back to when Chris Hayes was talking about Tara Reid, how mainstream Democrats love when MSNBC rips on Bernie Sanders or rips on anybody else but the corporate Democrats. But when, even in a very minor and totally uncontroversial way, they actually speak about the complicated issues and how maybe things aren't so simple and how maybe the corporate Democrats can be wrong or can learn something or have to do better, and that these conversations, yes, can even happen in an election year, they lose their minds. They called for Chris Hayes to be fired. I haven't seen that central call for Joy Ann Reid. I haven't seen a hashtag fire Joy, like there was a hashtag fire Chris, a few weeks ago. But a lot of people are saying, I'll never watch you again. I hope you get canceled. This is the end of your divisive attempt to elect Donald Trump, and on and on and on and on. And I think these conversations are vital because, again, this "you ain't black" story isn't going away. I talked about how Ben Dixon nailed this yesterday when he said that this "you ain't black" quote, the wider interview with Charlemagne, is definitely going to percolate within black spaces, formal and informal. It's not going away. It's only just started to spread. And that he's seeing even today, he's kind of updated that, how on Instagram, black comedians, black commentators of all stripes are sharing this and getting views by the millions from their own traditional viewing bases. This is not Trumpian bots. This is not Russia, sharing this story. This is not some conspiracy that the corporate Democrats can wave away. The story's real and it's ongoing. And I think that what Charlemagne in this interview notes, he says it earlier, this is about more than Biden and the need to offer an apology, because there are material changes that are needed. It's not just about words, it's about deeds. So some people have suggested a key deed would be a black female VP. And Charlemagne says if you pick someone like Klobuchar, it's going to have a depressive effect on the voter turnout. It could be policies geared to helping those people from the black community that need the most help. Some of those things will overlap with progressive policies like Medicare for all and higher minimum wages, but some of those policies will have to be targeted specifically to the African American community. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think this was a great statement by Charlemagne, and I really commend Joy Reid for having this talk, because the pressure to silence any dissent on the Biden front on, quote unquote mainstream progressive media must be immense right now. The pressure has to be so high on Joy Reid to not talk about this because it quote unquote hurts Biden. But I'll be honest, this can help Biden. If these conversations happen and they are frank and they are honest and they are open and people actually learn from them, there's still time to make amends and make real lasting material commitments, which can actually put Biden in a better position. I'm skeptical, but it's possible. But I'll tell you one thing, burying this and pretending it didn't happen and waiting for Biden to do something like this again, because this will not be the last time, is certainly not the answer.